you so much for taking time out for us today. It's an absolute pleasure to be talking to you.
Thank you so much, Supriya. Always a pleasure. I remember the last interaction we had also was very good. So thank you so much for giving me and ISACA an opportunity. Thank you.
The pleasure is mine, and thank you for your kind words, sir. So, I was actually going through ISACA's 2026 AI Pulse poll, right? And it had it displayed a very concerning reality because, which is why I wanted to speak to you today. It said that AI usage is definitely increasing, right? It's becoming more mainstream with various sectors adopting it. However, governance, ROI measurement, and operational readiness is not keeping up with the pace of adoption, right? And
That's right.
86% of the employees are using AI, but only 35% say that their ROI expectations are being met. So I'd like to first understand, sir, is the Indian industry rushing to deploy AI before it is being able to define the business case and success metrics?
Sure. I think this is one of the challenges that everybody is aware of, and they're still doing it. In fact, not just the ISACA Pulse poll, but other ISACA interactions have also indicated to that there's a lot of AI adoption being done, probably driven by things like FOMO. People are scared of missing out the benefits, or that somebody else is doing it, or there is so much hype on social media today that everything is being done by AI, and these are the benefits that we're getting. But the fortunate or unfortunate part about AI is that this is not like any other technology, right, of the past. This is not like adopting the cloud, or this is not like adopting ERP system and then you fix certain things to meet your context and then starts working. AI is a different animal. So unless you're very sure of the use case, in fact, if you look at the statistics, one of the things that people in the Pulse poll talk about is that it's too early to talk about the ROI, right? Because we don't know what we're trying to use it for. Some of the low-hanging fruits where people are already using it are still not effectively being managed. There's a lot of friction, right? So people are using it for customer service and chatbot and things like that. And I'm sure you're seeing that social media is full of people complaining, saying that the chatbot doesn't understand what it is doing. The chatbot is not giving me over to a human being. It is not resolving my problem, right? Those kinds of things. So I think that is one of the challenges that will definitely exist because we are trying to, do the reverse of, instead of having a target and then shooting it, we are shooting an arrow and then trying to define a target around it, which is a very unfortunate way of doing it. So unless there is a lot of clarity in terms of what are we using it for, what do we expect, do we have the right kind of data, are we able to manage the technology well enough, right? Do we understand the risks? Unless these questions are answered, I think it's very difficult and very early for people to talk about ROI because, again, the entry barriers are very low. Right? You just need to use a browser. You probably don't even need a subscription. You don't need to pay money, but you can get into the game. But then afterwards, what happens is something that you need to pay a lot of attention to. So I think there's definitely some ways to go for people to figure out what to do and how to fix it and things like that.
That's very true, and you mentioned a very pertinent point about FOMO. Everybody wants to be on board the AI bus. So, which is what probably explains that there are so many use cases, but when it comes to actual deployment, the percentage is so low, right?
That's
And
right.
so you're right. I mean, they're in such a hurry to adopt AI that the governance framework is not really there. They're adopting AI without enforcing a proper governance framework, right? And
Mhm.
so and 1 out of every 5 organizations do not have any governance framework. So is India scaling AI faster than it is governing it? And what would you say are some of the risks associated with this?
Right. I think risk is a very interesting topic in the context of AI, especially because very often there is so much going on within the AI tool or technology or whatever you want to call it, that it could give rise to a lot of different types of risks, right? There could be strategic risk because you're adopting the wrong type of AI or you don't have a business case. So you spend a lot of money into it and then you end up with nothing or nothing to show that gives the benefit. You're also creating a lot of friction because the customers expect something to happen, but it doesn't happen and your tool is not doing its job. There could be a lot of governance risk because you are having compliance issues that could come up. You could have reputational impacts. You could have regulatory challenges. See, one of the challenges with AI also is that the industries that are using it are not sure how the regulator is looking at it. right? So if you take, for example, the idea that robocalls are happening so much today, it's a very simple tool to deploy, right? You need to give it access to a calling device or a calling software. You give it numbers and give it the text, and it's going to do it. And it's a voice that identifies itself and does it. But what is the impact of that from many perspectives? People don't understand. For example, I'm on a do not disturb list, but I get a lot of these calls. And some of these companies, I actually write to them saying that, why are you doing this? And they say, we don't know, right? The tool is being done and it's configured in such a way that it's not able to figure this out. Then there could be a lot of operational risks, right? And that is where a lot of the challenges come. Operationally, there are a lot of unknowns. In fact, the people who are using AI to come up with AI, or who are coming up with AI itself, are scared of the emergent behavior, if you can call it that, right? So for an organization that is just adopting the tool, not really having any control into how the tool works, right? Some of these things have a few trillion parameters that are being set up. So you really don't know what parameters is telling it what and why it's behaving in a certain way, right? Explainability, for example, is a challenge. You could have a litany of risks that are coming from ISACA's pulse poll as well, right? We are talking about privacy violations. We are talking about misinformation and disinformation, right? We are talking about loss of intellectual property. We are talking about social engineering, misengineering, social advantages, things like that. And then, of course, the biggest challenge is that we are kind of, doing a discussion between job displacement and job loss and productivity improvements. And sometimes when you don't have the right kind of ROI defined, this becomes an escape route saying that we are using AI and this is why we are doing it. Because deep in, if you look at the technology industry itself, many of them are aware that it's not just AI that's causing the job losses, right? Many of them had ramped up assuming that there will be some changes in the production and things like that. And there are so many contextual factors that are coming up that are causing these issues. So the risk is definitely going to be there. There's definitely going to be challenges in terms of data loss. There's definitely challenges in terms of privacy. The challenge is going to be also that we don't even know this at the moment. All right. Let's say I'm trying to use AI for doing some kind of data crunching, and then it comes up with an outcome. Because my process is not defined correctly to understand that outcome and handle it correctly, I end up impacting the customer negatively, right? That can become a challenge. So there's a lot of risks that need to be taken care of so that they can effectively use the AI tools that are being made available.
So you made a very pertinent point on the operational risks, right? So since you're talking to companies on such a daily basis, how aware would you say are companies of the operational risks related to AI deployment, right? I mean, how aware are they of the fact that if an AI system fails, what happens then?
See, I think there is a little bit of a knowing, doing gap sort of thing here, right? Many of them are aware of the risks. But because there's a lot of pressure, both from internal stakeholders saying that we need to use AI, our nearest competitor is using it, or we're seeing a lot of social media output or media output saying AI is able to do all these things, there is that intention to use it. The second thing is that while it is easier to get into the AI tool, AI game, so to speak, it is harder to manage it because you don't have the necessary landscape to do it. You don't understand the risk. You don't know how to audit it. You don't know what's involved in the supply chain, right? You don't know what decisions are being taken out of that. For example, I was talking to somebody who was using a lot of SaaS services. And then they said that because the SaaS service is now building a lot of AI into it, the AI is actually learning things out of their data, and the vendor is able to provide some services using that to someone else. So how do you handle such a scenario, right? So indirectly, your intellectual property that is coming from years of being in the business, that is coming from your staff on the field, understanding your customers, is now getting readily packaged into something that can be sold to something else someone else as a service. Right. So I think that is where the issue is going to come, that how do we recognize when something goes wrong and what can we do about it? Because the gap for that is very limited. In a traditional sense of the word, if you had a breach, for example, the Ponemon Institute and a lot of other people talk about it, you are having a dwell time of about 200 days. I always mention this, right? You have people within a network for about 200 days. But in an AI type of scenario, you don't know what's going on. You don't know where the leak is happening. You don't know how the data is being misused by whom, who gets access to it. I mean, it could be a whole series of things that could go wrong and you won't even find out about. Right? So I think that's the bigger challenge.
Sir, that's absolutely right. And one more thing that I was hoping to talk to you about is AI literacy, right? AI has now become pertinent to every job role that is out there, including ours, right? And the study also mentions that 82% of professionals are saying that AI literacy is now critical, and 57% are expecting more AI-related job roles, right? So, sir,
Right.
under this scenario, what would you say that, how should Indian companies rethink workforce training and talent strategy to stay
Right.
competitive? Because AI
I,
is no longer an
right. AI is eventually becoming like being able to do the or understanding the most common business language that is around, right? It is going to become that sort of a thing. It is like a utility, but you need to manage it carefully. It's not only going to shock you if something goes wrong; it's going to probably shock the whole enterprise if something goes wrong. So I think literacy is going to be something that's going to be required across the board. Because today, as an end user, somebody who sits within the enterprise, I have access to AI within the tools that I'm using, right? I'm preparing an office document. I have a little AI agent over there that's going to help me rewrite the document, correct grammar, do things like that, right? So let's say I'm doing a document that is a general email that I'm sending out to my colleague, and the AI tool looks at it. The risks from that could be very different from, let's say, I'm processing some data that has PII, personally identifiable information, and one of those pieces of information leaks out. That could have a different implication, right? So at that level, I need an education about AI. What can you use it for? What can't you use it for? Things like that. The other side of it is also that AI has become very easy to use because of a tool or a browser itself. It's not that you have to download it from somewhere or it can be centrally managed or you need a specialized application or anything like that, right? It's already there for me to use. So it becomes very important that everybody understands the risk. Everybody understands what can go wrong, even if I put in some piece of data I'm not supposed to put in. That's one part of the story. The second part of the story, I think, is all the people who are the guardians of the enterprise, right? All the risk professionals and all the audit professionals also need to have an understanding of AI and how to look at the AI related risks, how to look at the auditing aspect of AI, because these become very, very important, right? When you look at it from a risk perspective, this is not like a standard software tool that you're using where you may have to look at risks from a specific perspective. You need to look at a whole overarching set of risks from data, from what vendor is involved, what is the tool learning, where is it getting stored. For example, I was reading a report which said that a lot of the tools that we use to transcribe meetings are actually sending the transcription related recordings and things like that to some third party country or third party location, unless you know what the tool is doing, right? Now, we don't know who's getting access to it. And it is easy for somebody to claim that we're not touching your data, but you know that they may be actually touching the data either directly or inadvertently, right? So that's one thing. And then finally, I think this is very important, is that the board or the management level of the organization needs to have a very good understanding of AI, right? Because there is a lot of pressure to be the one who's leading with AI, but there's also a lot of pressure that I want to minimize the risks that are going to come out of this, which means I need to understand what that technology is about, what is the reputational implication, what is the organizational implication, what does it mean from a productivity perspective, what does it mean if things go wrong, right? For example, a lot of people are talking about, should a human be in the loop? So unless you understand the context of the organization and where you're putting it in, which requires that extra skilling and updating, you will not be able to put in place the necessary controls and manage this correctly.
Mentioning that there are transcription tools that give away the data. That's something I realized, that we are giving away the intellectual property rights to them, right? So that is one of the main concerns as far as AI adoption is concerned. There are also privacy breaches, and there is misinformation and social engineering that has emerged as some of the top AI concerns, right?
Right.
So I'd like to sort of understand from you, has AI governance now become a boardroom issue in India, and what should CXOs prioritize over the next couple of months as far as this issue is concerned?
Right. I really hope that it has become a board governance issue and that management and CXOs are realizing for it, because this is like buying an expensive car which has all the features but really not knowing how to use it if you don't make it a board issue. And also, I think somewhere the regulators putting the pressure on companies to make sure that this becomes a board issue, right? So usually we have this tendency to do something only if the regulators expecting us to do something. So the feelers are already out there saying that please regulate it, please manage it. So I think the CXOs have the role cut out for them in terms of what they need to do. And at some point, this becomes a tone from the top sort of thing, right? Because if you don't regulate it, if you don't have a structure on what you're going to do, it's literally everybody doing whatever they want to do. So I think one of the simplest things that organizations should do from an AI perspective is probably have an AI policy. What we will allow with the AI, where is it going to be integrated, where will I not allow it, right? For example, I'm a design firm that specializes in very high-end design for specific customers. Would my design engineers be able to use AI tools when I know that the tool can also probably learn something from this and then probably go and do something out there basis the knowledge it is learning from my enterprise or from my customers or things like that, right? So I think that understanding is required. So there is a requirement of a clarity on what type of policy can be put in place, because then that can define what risks I will accept, what kind of auditing is required, what kind of data privacy controls are required, right? What kind of skilling do I need? Right? Do my design engineers understand that when I say, if the tool says this is going to go to our central database, are you okay with it? Should I click yes or no? Right? How do I manage that? So I think a very holistic approach is required, starting with the policy on top, because even ISACA's poll indicated that many of the organizations don't have a policy, right? Don't have visibility into what is allowed or not. And today we have to use the policies correctly. So if you define something around it, then that becomes a basis for decision making, right? It can actually tell you whether something will be used or not, something should be used or not, and also probably educate us on the risk perspective. One of the questions that is also coming up is, should customers be informed that they are dealing with an AI entity, a tool or something like that, right? And this is something that I always think of. If you go to any Indian restaurant today, they actually have that green dot or red dot or whatever it is to indicate that, it has a certain ingredient inside it. I think something similar will also have to be done from an AI perspective, so that I know that I'm actually dealing with a human being or I'm dealing with an AI tool, and there are certain limitations for that. So going back to the point, I think it will be useful for CXOs to get involved early on, make sure that they understand the risk. If they're a CRO, make sure that the CIO gets involved from a business perspective, so that they are able to say that this is what the business wants on this. So please manage the risk according to that. The CTO gets in place so that there's even a simple control to tell you that AI is being used. Right? I know many organizations where they say that we don't even know if our employees are using AI. Right? We enable them to do certain things and they're able to do it. And employees are also able to take it off the central or company provider laptop or whatever device. Right? I can go to my own personal device, look for it, and come back in there. So I think it's definitely something that the CXOs need to manage and get a handle on.
So, sir, from our conversation so far, right, we have established that AI adoption needs to be there for a reason, right? It needs a holistic
Mm-hmm.
approach and it should be done out of FOMO. So, for enterprises that are watching this interview, what would you advise? I mean, if they had to invest on AI, for what should it
Mm-hmm.
be?
I think the simplest thing they should invest in is on skilling. Because if you have the right kind of people who understand what they're dealing with, right, then it becomes easier for you to deal with the entire thing downstream. So look at it from a risk perspective, right? ISACA offers this great certification which helps people understand the risks from AI. There's also a similar thing on audit. So whatever it is, right, across the board, making sure that there are skilled people dealing with it. See, because I can be a dumb user of technology where I simply go with it, or I understand what risks I'm doing, and before I hit enter, before I read the terms and conditions and say okay, I understand what I'm doing. So I think that that's the simplest thing you can do, because if you skill, then a lot of other questions will get answered. People will ask you for budgets, people will ask you for tools that need to be put in place. People will even start thinking in terms of what is the reputational impact of this, right? What could be the regulatory impact of this? And if you look at where we are as enterprises in India, we have a lot of convergence of things happening. DPDP is going to come in place. There is also a talk of AI law that is going to come into place. There's a lot of AI guidelines available, right? And if you're not careful, you can get caught in that perfect storm where you get blindsided by something that is coming up. So I think the simplest thing would be to skill people. Make sure that you have the right team on board who understands AI.
So I must say it was an absolute pleasure talking to you as always, right? And you shared very insightful views on AI adoption and why it shouldn't be done out of FOMO. It needs a multifaceted approach, right? There are several factors like risk that needs to be taken into account. There is governance that needs to be taken into account. There's skilling that needs to be taken into account before deploying AI, right? And it was a wonderful conversation that I had with you today, and I'm sure it will help every decision maker that is watching this interview on how they should adopt AI in their particular organization. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Pleasure. Thank
Thank you so
you.
much, sir.